In this video, we're going to do the Space Invaders series, alright? It's called Space Infestors for future copyright reasons, but nonetheless. So I have the final solution. Let me show you guys what it'll look like. Alright, so we have the invader falling down. That's my ship down here. When I press A and D, I can move, and when I hit space, it fires a bullet, and if it touches that invader, it kills it and spawns it at a random X position, alright? Like so. And if I hit it 3 times, that was the second time. If I hit it 1 more time, then the game ends and I win. Likewise, if I run the game again and the invader reaches all the way down to the bottom of the screen, then of course the game ends and I lose. Alright, so there are a lot of moving parts, right? There's the invader going down. When I hit space, I fire a bullet. They have to collide. I can move my ship with A and D. Right, tons of moving parts here. So that's why it's split into 3 parts, right? Part 1 is going to be what we're doing now, starting off with, is we're just going to focus on rendering. We're just going to focus on drawing everything on the screen. Part 2 is going to be focusing on moving the bullet, the invader, and the ship, right? And part 3 is going to deal with handling the keyboard input, right? When I press A and D, it should move the ship. When I hit space, it should fire a bullet. And of course, they collide and detecting the win and lose conditions, etc. So it's a really big problem. That's why it's split up into 3 parts. I highly recommend you draw pictures and do your domain analysis. For the sake of time, I'm not going to do it, but this is a really big problem and you shouldn't be holding it all in your head. You should be really evaluating vocally, verbalizing vocally all the constraints this game has. All right, because it's a lot to take in for first timers. Anyways, I have the problem opened up in Racket, so let's just get started. So here it is. We have a ton of contents defined for us already, so let's review them really quickly. We have a width that's 300, a height that's 500, half width and half height divides them by 2, and we have some images over here, so let's play around with those. I'm going to hit Control R. We can ignore this for a second. Going to scroll back up to where we were. Alright, so we have this background, which is an NPC with a width and height of 300, 500 on black. Alright, so let me type that variable. That's the background. We have the enemy-img, which is the emoji of a space invader with the text function from to http/image, right? Again, strings of emojis are not images. You have to convert them to images with the text function, all right? So enemy-img, all right, like so. And we also have the tank emoji here. This is a space. This is not a, tank though. It's a ship. I couldn't, surprisingly, there's not a tank emoji. But anyways, that's what it is. And we also have the bullet-image, which is just a thin rectangle that is solid yellow. And that's what it looks like. Hopefully you guys can see that it's a little small, but it is there. Okay? Okay. So that's the bullet image. And we have a few constants here, bullet-speed. So bullets travel up, and up is negative, right? And we have the enemy speed, which is traveling 1 down in Y, and the tank speed, which is our left and right velocity, X. Okie dokie. So I'm going to close on this, and we can move on. Let's find the problem statement. It's way further down here. Okay, so notice how the data design for point, tank, MaybeEnemy, and MaybeBullet are done. Finish these data design steps 3 and 4 for the game structure below. So here is the game structure. All right, step 3, examples. Come up with the following data examples for game where there's all these things and sketch them out on TL Draw, okay? So let's just review them, okay? So I have all these sketched out on TL Draw, all right? So here it is, right? So a tank at the bottom of the screen with the bullet not fired yet, any live enemy. All right, this is that one here. All right, so this is the tank at the bottom of the screen. The bullet is not fired yet, and there is a live enemy, okay? All right, so 2, a tank at the bottom of the screen with a bullet fired and a live enemy. All right, so there's the bullet fired, there's my live enemy, and there's my tank at the bottom of the screen. Let's move on to 3, all right? 3, a tank at the bottom of the screen with a bullet whose position is super close to the enemy, all right? So there's the bullet. There's my tank at the bottom of the screen. It's super close to the enemy. And lastly, 4, a tank at the bottom of the screen with the bullets and the enemy dead, like so. All right. So I highly recommend you draw and write everything out and again, verbalize the problem because it's a lot to take in. Okie dokie. So we should do the examples for these, the data examples. But before we do that, let's review the point, tank, MaybeEnemy, and MaybeBullet structures above, because it's a lot. Okay, so here is our defined struct point. Point has an X and Y field. They are self-explanatory, right? So they are numbers. Here are the access signatures and a template for that. All right. So next is the structure tank, which has an X. X is the horizontal position of the tank, and vel-x is which direction the tank is moving in the x-axis. So vel is short for velocity, all right? And of course, here's the signature, access signatures. You give it a tank and you get out that number, like so, and a template that operates on that. Okay, let's move on to the enemy, right? So enemy is this make point when it's alive. We have a union MaybeEnemy, and it's one of, right? False. False means that the enemy is dead, all right? And when it's a point, it means that the point is alive at the point position, right? At the X and Y, okay? And here is a template for that. Hopefully it's not too surprising. We've been going over union templates for quite a while now, right? When there's a one of, and there are, how many cases here, we have to write a con that distinguishes between the types of what they are. And of course, if it's a structure, we have to take apart the pieces. All right. It's very similar with bullets, right? So maybe bullet is one of, either false. False means the bullet is dead or it's not fired yet, right? And the point means that the bullet is shot at the point position. And here is a template for that. Okay, so let's return to where we were. We're in the middle of writing the data examples for this game structure. Right? Let's review this game structure. So game is make game, where the player field is a tank, the shot field is a MaybeBullet, the invader field is a MaybeEnemy, and the score is just a number. And here's how you interpret all those data, right? So player is a tank that is controlled by the user, shot is the bullet that might be fired, right? So it can either be shot or not shot, right? And invader is the enemy coming down at us, right? Which can be dead or not dead, right? So that's why it's a MaybeEnemy, okay? Score is how many enemies we have shot down, and likewise, here are all the access signatures to get them out of this game structure. Okie dokie. So let's just do this one example. So we're going to make a center tank. So make tank, right? So the first argument to tank is the X position, right? So we're going to give it the half width, and we'll say a velocity of 0 or something. All right, so that's a tank in the middle of the screen, right? It's right here in the middle of the screen. Okay. All right, so try to come up with examples, right? So these should all be make games, right? These 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? These 5 should all be make games corresponding to these 5, all right? So pause the video and try to come up with examples for these, all right? And I'm gonna go for spoilers in 3, 2, and 1. All right, so I'm assuming that you took a good swing at it. So now let's go over it together. So not yet shot game is this first example over here, right? A tank at the bottom of the screen with the bullet not fired yet, any live enemy, right? So this is the tank at the bottom of the screen. There's no bullet here, and there is a live enemy. Okay, so what does this look like in terms of data, right? So in terms of data, right, we have a make game here. The first field to make game is a tank. So we have to give it a tank. So we can do make tank half width 0 like so. All right. We can also use, of course, use this variable that we defined it to reduce repetition. So center tank. All right. So that's the first argument to make game. What about the second argument, right? For the second field, well, it's a MaybeBullet, and for this MaybeBullet, we have to refresh our memory as to what it is, right? It is either false or this point. And when it's false, it means the bullet is dead, not on screen / fired. And that kind of fits what we need, right? With the bullets not fired yet is this first description, all right? And the data we use to represent that is false. All right, so the shot field is false. All right, what about the invader field, right? The invader field is a MaybeInvader, right? And refresh our memory as to what it is. Union MaybeInvader is one of false, or this make point, all right? So false means the enemy is dead. Point means the enemy is alive at the point position. All right. So according to the one that we need to do, right, and a live enemy. All right, we just finished the bullet over here. All right, so the live enemy, we just have to give it a point, right? Because the point satisfies a MaybeInvader, right? Point is a MaybeInvader. So let's just do make point, 20, 30. All right, and lastly, we have a score, right, which is a number. So let's just leave that as 0 as always. All right, so these are our 1, 2, 3, and 4 arguments for MaybeGame that satisfy the signature correctly. All right, let's move on to the next example, miss shot. All right, so it's also a MaybeGame, like so. Pause the video and try to come up with an example for miss shot. All right, I'm gonna go with spoilers in 3, 2, and 1. All right, I'm assuming it's a good swing at it, so let's go over it together. All right, so the first field again is always going to be of type tank. So let's just give it our center tank, right, stored in this variable. All right, second field, right, well, this miss shot game represents this scenario where a tank is at the bottom screen, that's done, with a bullet fired. So the bullet is fired and a live enemy, okay? So remember, right, a tank, right, a bullet, MaybeBullet, actually, can be either false or a position. So when it's a position, it's alive, right? So we'll just do that. And we can just give it some random coordinates here. I can give it, 200, 200, right? And then the next one, right, is, let's see, a live enemy, okay? So it's like somewhere over here. So it has to be another position, okay? So we'll do make point 20, 30. Okay. So that is that example done. I should give it the score. I almost forgot. Takes in 4. All right. It would have shouted at us and said that it needed 4 arguments. All right. Let's move on to the next example. Shot hit game. All right. It should be make game. All right. So try to come up with the data for this, the example for a shot hit game, right? So it's this third case here. All right, a tank at the bottom of the screen with a bullet whose position is super close to the enemy. All right, so this case right there. All right, pause the video and try to come up with that. Spoilers in 3, 2, and 1. All right, I'm assuming that you took a good swing at it, so let's go over it together. So, of course, we're going to have our tank as always, as the first field. Second field is a MaybeBullet. All right, so we're going to, copy this. So we're going to make it super close to the enemy here. So that's going to be the enemy. And then the MaybeBullet is going to be, like a few pixels below. We're going to say, I don't know, 40 and 15-ish, or, 18, okay? And those are some good enough numbers. All right. So this is the bullet at 1840, and this is the live enemy at 2030. All right, the X and Y. All right, so this satisfies this picture, more or less, right? We have the tank at the bottom with the bullet very close to the enemy. All right, that is that data example done. Let's move on to the next one. A player that is alone. All right, so try to come up with the example for that. Okay, so that is 4, right? A tank at the bottom of the screen with the bullet and an enemy dead. All right, so pause the video and try to come up with that. Spoilers in 3, 2, and 1. All right, I'm assuming they took a good swing at it. So now let's go over it together. All right, so we have the first argument to make game. So of course, the center tank, right? And MaybeBullets, right? So again, really a tank at the screen with a bullet and enemy dead. So they're both dead, and dead we chose to use false, meaning that the MaybeBullet is dead, right? So it's not shot yet. And then we used false again to represent the invader being dead, right? And likewise, score is going to be 0. Okie dokie. Now, let's move on to the next one, invalid-game, okay? So try to come up with an example that doesn't fit this data description right over here, okay? So it should be a make game. Pause the video and try to do that. Spoilers in 3, 2, and 1. All right, gonna assume that you took a good swing at it. So let's just do something silly here, right? So it says that's the tank here, so we're just going to do 99, right? It's completely invalid. And then the shot is, you know, something, it's a string, it's not matching this MaybeBullet. The other one can be, I don't know, the string enemy, right? And then the score, we can make it, you know, the string 1, right? It should be a number 1. All right, if we run this, we get MaybeGame expects 4 arguments, but only found 3. So we forgot to add the score to this one, right? Takes in 4 arguments, right? The tank, the bullet, the enemy, the MaybeEnemy, and then the score itself, like so. Anywho, that is pretty much the examples done. Let's move on to the next step. So the next step is step 4 of writing the data examples, right? So finish step 4 in the template for the game structure, and they gave us a signature for that. So pause the video and try to come up with the template for this game structure, okay? Spoilers in 3, 2, and 1. All right, so I'm assuming that you took a good swing at it, so now let's go over it together. So we have game-temp, which consumes a game and produces, we don't know yet because it's just a template. So we're laying out a good scaffold for functions that consume a game. Let's call the input parameter, let's name it GM, right? Just taking 2 letters out of game here. Likewise, all right, we want to take apart this game structure because it's a structure, we likely want to take it apart. All right, take the pieces apart. So game-player of the given game will give us the tank. Game-shot of the given game will give us the bullet. Game-invader of the given game. Game-invader of the given game will give us the enemy, MaybeEnemy, and then lastly, game-score will give us the score number of the game. All right. Likewise, since these types over here are non-base types, right? They're not booleans, numbers, strings, the base types that come with racket. These are references to data types that we created, right? So we're dealing with nested structures. This structure has structures inside of it that are themselves structures. We should probably wrap them in a helper function, all right? And let's just do that. All right, so we're going to wrap this into the helper function tank-temp, and then the next one is going to be MaybeBullet-temp. Same for the enemy. All right, so MaybeEnemy-temp, and then the game score is a number that is a base type of racket, right? So we don't have to pass this to a helper function. All right, so this is a good scaffold for functions that consume a game, and that is the data template part done for problem A. Now let's move on to problem B. All right, gonna scroll down here. So problem B, finish the function design steps. All right, so these steps for draw-mbinvader, draw-mbullet, draw-tank, and render. So this M right here, they stand for maybe, okay? So we have the signature for draw-mbinvader, consumes a MaybeEnemy and an image and produces an image. And the purpose is that it draws the invader at its given coordinates if it is alive, right? Otherwise, produce the given background image. Okay, so signature, purpose, let's dub this out. So define draw-mbinvader. We'll call this one enemy. All right, and then BG for the background. And then this has to produce an image at the end of the day. So let's just spit out the image that we're given, like so. All right. Now, next, let's come up with some examples here. So check, expect. All right, draw-mbinvader. All right, so let's give it a dead invader, which is going to be false. All right, and we'll give it the background. This is that black background. All right, so pause the video. And what do you expect this to produce? All right, spoilers in 3, 2, and 1. Well, according to the signature, right, draws the invader at its given coordinates if it is alive. Otherwise, produce the given background, right? So we're given draw-mbinvader a background, and we should spit it back out according to this purpose statement, like so. All right. Let's move on to the next example. So check, expect. What happens when the invader is alive? So invader. So remember that MaybeEnemy can either be false or a point, and that point indicates it means that it's alive, right? So let's just do make point 2030 on top of the background. All right, some background. Okay, what do you expect this to produce, right? Pause the video, right? This, try to use the how to design HTTP image functions to place a invader, right? The enemy dash image, right? So place, what is it? Image / align of the enemy image, all right, at the given coordinates, all right? Pause the video and try to fill in this function for this draw-mbullet, all right? Spoilers in 3, 2, and 1. All right, I'm assuming that you took a good swing at it, so now let's go over it together. Okay, so this place image, right, there is the documentation for it, right? So place image as a line, takes in the image, and x and y, which are numbers, right? This real is a number, and then the x place and the y place, right? So those are strings, and they are the system strings for the x place, left, right, middle, center, etc. And then there's another one for the y place, right, top, bottom, etc. All right, we're going to use left and top as always, and then we're going to slap it on top of the background. Okay, so draw an invader. When given this invader, which is this make point 2030, so draw that enemy image at 2030, right, with the left and top on top of the background. All right, with the origin and its left and top. And we can run this off to the side here, all right, or just run this example against the stub and we can see the images. So let's just do that, all right, and this is what it'll produce, like so. So this is that failing test. The first test is passing only because we're just spitting it back out. All right. So this is the invader at 2030. And this is the image we want to reduce in this function. Okie dokie, going to close this. All right. So the examples to run, going to come out the stub. Let's grab the template for MaybeEnemy. All right. Because that's a good scaffolding that we can use. So MaybeEnemy right here. Here's the template for it. MaybeEnemy-temp. Let's use this as a starting point, like so. Rename this. It's called draw-mbullet. All right. This takes in 2 arguments. The template only took in 1, so we have to manipulate this template a little. Call it BG. All right. Okay. So now really pause the video and try to come up with the solution on your own for draw-mbullet. Hopefully this should be all the mental scaffolding needed. I'm going with spoilers in 3, 2, and 1. All right, so I'm going to assume that you took a good swing at it. So now let's go over it together. So looking at the examples here, right? If we call a draw-mbullet with false and we give it a background, we should produce that given background, right? Otherwise, produce that given background, right? If it is alive, if the invader is alive, right? And the MaybeEnemy is alive. So this is that case when it's dead, right? When it's a Boolean, and we would just want to produce the given background that we passed in, right? Like so. So we're passing this background, BG, like so. Okay, so that's the first test done. Let's do the other one. So this is when the invader is alive, make point 2030. So we know that we have to produce an image at the end of the day. And looking at our examples, right, we have this place image align. We probably want to use this, right? And the enemy dash image, according to this example, right, the enemy image. And then we have the x and y of the enemy. So that's the 20. And this is that 30, the point dash y. And likely we have to do left top. All right, so left top. Left top on top of the given background. So BG, not the capitalized version. All right, make sure you don't do this because for reasons that I don't want to get into. But also because, it kind of fulfills its purpose. Anyways, we run this code, it should pass that test. And so they do. All right. So now let's move on to draw-mbullet. All right. So draw-mbullet consumes a MaybeBullet and an image, and it produces an image. Draw the bullet at its given coordinates if it is alive. Otherwise, produce the given background. All right. So very similar to draw-mbullet. All right. So pause the video and try to do the how to design function step, right? All these steps for draw-mbullet. All right. Spoilers in 3, 2, and 1. All right. I'm assuming that you took a good swing at it. So now let's go over it together. Okay. So signature purpose. Let's stub this out. So define draw-mbullet we'll call this input parameter bool. And of course, the image is going to be named bg. And lastly, this has to produce an image. So let's just spit out the image that we're given, like so. All right, signature for stub examples. So check expect. All right, so draw-mbullet. All right, so what happens when the bullet is dead, right? And we're given this background. Well, according to the purpose statement, right? Otherwise, produce the given background, right? That's what we want to do. So we're just going to do that. Okay. Do the other example for when the bullet is alive. So draw-mbullet. So let's say the bullet is at, it's the point, so it's alive, right? And it's at 150, 250, all right? So MaybeBullet is either false or a point. And that point is when it's alive, all right? And then on top of the background. All right, what do you expect this to produce? Well, it's very similar to the Space Invaders one above. The draw-mbullet, I mean, above, right? We want to do a place image, a line, all right, of the bullet. So we had the bullet -img, all right? So remember what it was. It was this yellow line, all right, at the given x and y coordinates of the MaybeBullet that we passed in. So 150, 250, right, like so, on top of a background. Okie dokie. That's pretty good. Save that. Run against stub. All right. So it looks like there are some errors here. Let me see. Okay. It's giving me bad highlighting. So check expects two things. This is the first thing, and this is the second thing. Oh, I closed this parentheses block too early. So this should go around there. All right. So first thing, second thing. Okay, you're going to hit Control I because look, it's kind of spaced. The number is kind of spaced weirdly there. All right, like so. Much better. So first part, second part, that was my problem. Now let me run against the stub. Place image line expects 6 arguments but found 4. Whoops, I forgot left and top. Because place image align has to take in those two fields, right? An X place and a Y place. That is the origin of where we're going to start placing the image. Now, hopefully, everything works. We can just get mismatches. So now the examples are valid, and we just get the mismatches of this missing test that's not passing. Okay, so I'm going to comment the stub out now. Going to hide this, and let's grab a template, right? MaybeBullet. There's probably a template for it. So MaybeBullet, MaybeBullet, MaybeBullet here. Okay, here it is. So I'm going to use this as a scaffold for draw-mbullet. Paste this down, rename this. All right. Okay, we have the bullet. Right. It also consumes the background, another image. Call it BG. Okay. So pause the video. Hopefully this should be all the mental scaffolding needed for draw-mbullet. I'm going to go for spoilers. 3, 2, and 1. All right. So I'm assuming that you took a good swing at it. So now let's go over it together. All right. So looking at the first example, right? And the purpose statement draws the bullet at its given coordinates if it's alive. Otherwise, produce the given background. All right. So this is that given background BG. This, of course, should be BG. And what happens when it's a point? Looking at this second example, when it's alive. All right. We want to do a place image line. Okay. At the X and Y. So that's that 150. And this is that 250. All right. At left top. So left. The origin of left top. And then on top of the given background. Okay. So that should pass on our test. And looks like it fails. What happened here? It says, okay. Place the images line. 6 arguments, but only found 5. Okay. So, hide this. All right. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So what am I missing? Oh, it's the first one, right? It's the image. So I forgot to put the bullet image. I was going a little too fast there. Like so. So that was that yellow line. And now it passes. And likewise, we can run this off to the side so you guys can see what it will look like, right? It's just that one bullet in the middle at 150, 250, at those coordinates. Okie dokie. So that is that problem done. Let's move on to the next problem. Draw tank. All right. So pause the video and try to do the draw tank on your own, following the HTTP steps. All right. I'm going to go over spoilers in 3, 2, and 1. All right. So I'm assuming that you took a good swing at it. So now let's go over it together. All right. So signature purpose draws the tank at its given X coordinate at the bottom of the screen. Otherwise, produce the given background BG. Okay. So signature purpose, let's go with the stub. So define draw tank. Let's call the input parameter T and K, and then of course we'll call the given image the background. All right, produces an image, so this should stub out to some image. Let's just spit out the image that we're given. Next, let's go with some examples. So check expect. Draw tank, and then tank, right, is going to be a make tank. Right, that's how we make a tank. And its first argument is the X position, right? So let's give it 150, and 0 is the velocity X, all right? And of course, we want to pass it a background, all right? So what should this produce, right? This produces an image, right, over here, and it draws a tank that's given X coordinate at the bottom of the screen, all right? So place image / align, all right? We're going to draw the tank image, all right, at 150, right? So place image align, takes as its first argument the image and then the X coordinate. All right, so now let's do the Y coordinate. I don't know why it's kind of spacing like that though. So I had to hit enter and then do it again. So this 0 is not the X coordinate, it's the X velocity, all right? So what does it mean for the tank to be at the bottom of the screen right here, right? Over there, right? Well, let's just naively, you know, give it the height, all right? And lastly, let's just fill in all the other arguments. So left, top, on top of the background, all right? Let's evaluate this to the side and see what it gives us. Like so. Gonna run here. All tests pass. Weirdly, this should not be passing, but we're going to see why. All right. So tank image. Okay. Oh, yeah. So the tank. So when we evaluate this, right? It's where's the tank, right? Well, it's below the screen right here, right? It's like right here actually. So we're drawing it at the, you know, Y position that's all the way at the height of the screen. So this is the height of the screen, right? So, and we're drawing it, you know, starting from there. All right. So we need to subtract by the height of the image, right? To get our Y position up here, right? So we want to start drawing here, okay? So what we'll do is that we're going to subtract the image height of the tank image, all right? So let me run that. Now we should get a mismatch in our examples, and that is our tank right there. Okay, so this differs from this. It's good. It's just a mismatch. Going to come out the stub, and we can move on to the next step, which is getting the template, right? Is there a template that we can use as scaffolding? Yes, this tank is the structure, and there should be a template for that. So where is it? Right here, tank-temp. That takes apart the pieces, like so. So where is our draw tank? Here it is. All right. So now really pause the video. Hopefully this should be all the mental scaffolding needed for a draw tank. I'm going over spoilers. 3, 2, and 1. All right. So I'm assuming that you took a good swing at it. So now let's go over it together. All right. So looking at our examples here, right, we need to produce an image, and we did a place image in the example. So let's just do that. All right. So we want to place a tank image, right, like so, at 150, right? So that's the tank, given tank's coordinate X position, like so. And this fill X we actually don't need. So that was part of the template. It was just laying out all the pieces. It turned out we didn't need that piece. All right. So next is the height of the tank, right? The Y position of the tank, my bad. And it's going to be negative height of the given background, right? Negative height. So this is a constant, right? It's the height of the canvas right here, right? So we can use that. So negative height, and then image height, tank image, right? The exact same as this. All right, like so. And then let's fill in all the other arguments: left, top, and then background, like so. All right, it should pass that test. I forgot to rename it draw tank. There we go. And, oh, it doesn't pass that test. Draw tank expects only one argument, but found two. One argument. Oh, I forgot to add the BG. I forgot to manipulate the template, my bad. So there we go. Now it should pass all these tests. And so they do. It should pass this test. All right. So let's move on to the next function, the render function. All right. So let's review it. Render takes in a game and produces an image. It produces an image of the tank, invader, and bullet all on top of the background. Here's a huge hint. This function should call draw-mbullet, draw-invader, and draw-tank, okay? And the tests are omitted for this, all right? So try to go and follow the how to design function step for render. I'm going over spoilers in 3, 2, and 1. All right, I'm assuming that you took a good swing at it, so now let's go over it together. So signature purpose produces an image of tank, invader, and bullet all on top of the background, and stub. All right, so let's just come up with one example for this. Check expect. All right, render. So render has to take in a game. So let's grab one of the game examples that we wrote above. All right, let's grab I don't know, shot hit game. Okay. So like so, copy and paste that all the way down. All right. If you're, if you find yourself constantly scrolling up and down in some error cases, try to copy and paste the definitions down so you don't have to, scroll up and down to pull in the context every time. All right. Okie dokie. So this is a game, right? Render takes in a game. So we'll give it the shot hit game. And we expect this to produce the image. We're going to turn this whole make game into the image of the game, right? The tank centered with this as the bullet at 1840, with this as the invader at 2030, and the score is, of course, 0. That doesn't matter too much. Okay, so we expect to call, right? This function should call draw-mbullet. So let's just do that. So draw-mbullet, all right? So where is the bullet in this? Well, it's the second argument, so let's just give it a bullet, all right? And right now we'll just space this down on top of the background, all right? And let's just run this off to the side so you guys can see what it'll look like. All right, it's a bullet at 1840, okay? So we're not done yet, right? This still doesn't fulfill this purpose. This example doesn't fulfill this purpose entirely. We're still missing the invader and the bullet all on top. So let's review the other functions, right? Draw-mbinvader and draw-mbullet, all right? So draw-mbullet takes as its second argument an image. What if we feed it the results, right? What draw-mbinvader produces, okay? So we're going to feed this image into the second argument of draw-mbullet, all right? So let's just do that. So instead of background, we're going to call draw-mbinvader, all right? So where's the invader in this? Well, it's going to be this, right? So tank, bullet, invader, right? This is that enemy. So it's going to be make point 2030, right? So draw-mbinvader, right, takes in as its first argument a MaybeEnemy, MaybeEnemy, my bad. So where is it? Draw-mbinvader, right, takes in a MaybeEnemy, and a point is, a MaybeEnemy, all right? And it can either be false for the dead case, and then an image again. So this time, let's just give it the background for now. So background. All right. So we can run this off to the side here to see what that will produce. All right. So it's a invader and the bullet that are very close, right? That's what this shot hit game, right, means, right? The shot kind of hit the invader over here. Kind of barely clipped the arm right here, but nonetheless. All right, we're missing the tank though, right? So for the, let's look at the definition for draw-mbinvader. Draw-mbinvader, so draw-mbinvader takes as its second argument an image. So what if we feed this image, right? What do we give it? The image of the player, right? The tank on top of a background, all right? So let's just do that. All right, so the second argument to draw-mbullet is going to be it's going to be draw-tank actually, because tanks are never dead. It can never die, so it's not a maybe. So this takes in the tank, and let's just give it the make tank. Let's just give it a tank at, half width, and then the velocity x is 0, and we'll put this on top of the background. All right, so we can run this off to the side here. If it's valid and the signatures match, it should run. And there is our tank. Okie dokie. So we come up with, a general idea of how we're going to write this function, right? We're going to need all this. And likewise, we should start off with a template that consumes a game. So let's just grab that. So a template that consumes a game is going to be called game-temp. So game-temp. Okay. So that was some scaffolding that we did earlier. And we're going to use that because the render function consumes a game. So let's just use the scaffold. Going to come out the stub now. I forgot to run the examples against the stub actually. So let's just do that. It should just be a mismatch of this black background. All right. Of this. Okie dokie. So going to come out the stub. And here is the template for it. So pause the video. Hopefully that should be all the mental scaffolding needed to make the render function. All right. I'm over with spoilers in 3, 2, and 1. Pause the video and do it on your own. All right. I'm assuming that you took a good swing at it. All right. So let's go over it together. So looking at the examples here, we're going to need draw-mbullet, where we grab the bullet out of the game. All right. So we're going to do draw-mbullet, where the first argument is a bullet, right? And we're going to grab that bullet out of the game structure with game-shot. All right, so we're going to copy and paste this out. It turns out we don't really need these wrapper around these hover functions. It's fine, right? It's just that the template, sometimes adds extra stuff that makes us write better structured code. All right, so make game, right, takes draw-mbullet takes a bullet, right? So we can get that out with game-shot. All right, and the second argument is an image. So looking at the example here, we should draw an invader, right? So this game-shot got out this point of the shot, all right? So we'll do the draw-mbullet. So it takes as its first argument an invader, and we can get that out from the game with game-invader, like so. So we can paste it here. We can delete this wrapper to a helper function. Turns out we didn't need it. And then it takes in another image, and we're going to do, following the example here, we're going to pass it the result of draw tank and then getting the tank out on top of the background, right? So draw-tank, we're going to give it the game-player, which produces that tank, right? So that, all right, and then all on top of the background, right? Draw-tank as its second argument consumes an image. And we don't really need the score, and this was the wrapper function for the tank that we didn't need. All right, if we run, it should pass, and so they do. Okay. So now we can actually play around with this, right? We got all the rendering for this game done. So we can call main with one of our games up here, right? The main function with one of our games, right? Here's one example down here. Main of not yet shot game, right? So that's when we have the tank and the enemy, but no bullet. And notice, I'm pressing space and etc. It's not doing any interaction. It's saved for the other parts of this problem. All right. So let's call main and just play around with all these game examples that we defined, right? So main of not shot yet, right? Main of missed shot. Main of this game, right? Main of missed shot. So it missed. So the bullet fired here. That's why it's the variable, why it's called missed shot game. And then we can do player alone, right? Main of player alone. It's when the bullet and the enemy are dead. So just the tank alone. And likewise, the invalid game, of course, if we call it with the invalid game, it's going to crash at somewhere, right? Because it's saying tank-x expects tank given 99. Why? Well, because if we look at the invalid game structure, right? It's 99, right? This is not a tank, right? This should be a make tank in the first argument to game. Okay, again, the number one problem students make is that they misorder the signatures over here. So maybe they put the tank in where the enemy should be. So like so, right? We're gonna get tank dash x expecting tank given false. We call main with this, right? Where the first field is not tank, but the Boolean false, which is a MaybeEnemy, all right? Like so. All right, again, number one mistake is, misplacing the arguments, misplacing the parameters, and not following and obeying the types. All right, so you can, again, play around with this. I recommend you do so, right? So we can do a make game where, we can give it, make tank, we'll say 20, bullet is, position, right? So make point, we can give it any position, we'll do 200, 300, and then the other one, it can be false. So that's going to mean that no invaders can be drawn, all right, on the screen. And of course, we have to give it the score. So we can do the score, and like so. Whoops, I've got to give tank a velocity. There we go, like so. All right, so I recommend you play around with that to understand what this does. Anyways, that is about it for this one, this part 1. So this is future me, and I noticed that there's a bug with draw tank, right? It should be on the given background, right? Not this static background. So it should be like this, BG, okay? Let me show you guys why this is the case actually, all right? So if I play around with this, right? If I render it in a different order, let's say I'm gonna do a draw tank, right? And then I do the tank, so we'll give it the center tank. And then I do a draw-mbullet. We'll just make a point of 20, 30 on top of a draw-mbullet, and then we'll do a make point of 50, 60, 70, doesn't matter, and then on top of a background, right? If you run this, it's not going to draw the bullet and the invader, all right? So just run this off here, right? Why is that the case even though I told it to? And I recommend you type this in with this exact function definition, right? And step through it in a debugger. All right, I'm going to try to explain what's going on here. All right, so this draw-mbullet runs first. So we're going to draw this invader, all right, like so. And then we're going to draw this bullet on top of that, right? Like so. And now we're finally at this draw tank call, all right? So draw tank takes as its first argument this draw center tank, and then the second argument is this background right here, BG, right? So we're not passing this BG here, right? Where it has this invader and the bullet, right? We're giving it the static black background instead, right? So instead of using the BG variable, which is going to be this whole thing, right? This whole draw image with the invader and the bullet, and instead of using that, right, we end up with this, right, the tank alone, right, covering this image, right? So what's happening is this image is covering this image in a sense. All right, hopefully you understand that. I recommend you use the stepper to see what's going on. So this really should be PG, and that should fix that call. Right, so I need to run this code actually, and that is, that is that image there. Again, big difference, right? If I change this back to background, it's not going to draw those two like so. That is why I emphasize that it should be on the given background for all functions that consume a background, right? Like so. And when calling it, right, we pass it the black background at the last chain here. Okie dokie.